Welcome to week 9 video introduction. So this week we're introducing the trig functions, probably the most important types of functions that we learn in pre-calculus. The trig functions are sine and cosine, and then there's some other ones, tangent, cotangent, secant, cosecant. This is a very interesting marriage between angle rotation and points on a circle. Doesn't seem to have a lot of interesting applications, but it's just everywhere. It turns out that this relationship can be applied in lots and lots and lots and lots of situations. So the first thing is make sure you're using the correct pre-calculus math definitions of sine and cosine and things like that. They involve angles and points on a unit circle. They are not about dividing sides of a triangle. So if you've learned about dividing sides for sine or cosine in a geometry course or a previous math class, you're going to have to let go of that previous sort of basic idea to learn the new pre-calculus definitions of trig functions. I have displayed here an example of the cosine function, and this is a handout that's available on Canvas, so you can download this and get all of the nitty-gritty about the cosine function, as well as other things available in the handouts from Canvas. We're going to be calculating the values of trig things and graphing trig functions. Also, it's very important to learn how to measure angles using the radian measurement instead of just the degree measurement. Radians are used almost exclusively in STEM fields for reasons that will be discussed as the chapter proceeds, but everyone uses radian measurements for very good reasons. And so it's important to learn to use radian measurements, in this class here. Okay, big ideas. As I mentioned, trig functions are used to model just like all kinds of things. I wrote down a few here. Cell phones, computers, communications, weather patterns, ocean currents, fire, how it spreads. All those are trig functions. Biological systems, chemical reactions, medicine, metabolization, all of those things are governed, and the formulas involve trig functions. So trig functions are just a small sampling of where you will find them. In any case, whatever your major is, having a rich understanding of trig functions will really be helpful and useful. Possible sticking points for this week. Thinking in terms of circles is new for a lot of folks, so that can be tricky because we're not used to thinking, rotationally. So draw lots of circles. Practice thinking about revolving around the circle and forming an angle and a point on a circle so that you can kind of get that relationship as part of the way you think about trigonometry. Angles measured in radians often involve fractions and the symbol pi, and that can be confusing. Whereas, degrees is just like, 34 degrees, and that's all there is. You'll have like 2 pi over 3 radians, and that can be somewhat confusing just the way it looks. The abbreviation for radians is perhaps the worst possible abbreviation. It's kind of like a void. It's like a nothingness. And so when angles are written in radians, it can be confusing if you're not used to it because you don't see the radian word after it. And so people get confused about what's going on with that kind of measurements. Okay, finally, there's a bunch of new vocabulary. And a lot of it's just similar to vocabulary we've learned, except that they're using different words. Like, culturally, people have different words for the same thing, and we're running across that now with the trig functions. For example, horizontal shift is now often going to be referred to as a phase shift, and sometimes not. So there's that kind of thing. A vertical shift is going to now be referred to as a midline. Horizontal stretches are going to be referred to as period changes. Vertical stretches are going to be referred to as amplitude. So you have like different vocabulary for things that we've already learned and practiced before. For example, if the homework problem asks, what's the amplitude, you need to know that means what's the vertical stretch, right? So just kind of keep that in mind. Okay, so good luck this week. Remember, stop by my tutoring hours, email me if you have questions, and see if you can get a good head start on trig stuff because we're doing it for the next 2 chapters. All right, good luck.